Hello and welcome to ThePrint. I am Sampurna and today we are joined by best-selling author Anand Neelakantan. We are delighted to launch his latest work, Many Ramayanas, Many Lessons, on the print softcover. So here is the book for our readers. Published by HarperCollins, the book shows how the Ramayana has been reimagined in numerous forms across the world, transforming through oral storytelling, ancient texts, and modern retellings. Many Ramayanas, Many Lessons is Neelakantan's latest addition to his illustrious list of 80 books. He has previously written 7 books based on the Ramayana. His debut book, and the most read one, I think, is The Asura, which tells Ramayana from Ravana's perspective. He has also written screenplays for Hindi television serials such as Siya Ke Ram on Star TV, Mahabali Hanuman on Sony TV, Chakravarti Ashoka on Colors TV. And not to forget, he has also written the official prequel series of novels for the Bahubali film series. He's revered for his work in mythology, with 3 of his books being shortlisted for the Crossword Popular Award, and TV serials like Swaraj and Taj Divided by Blood winning awards for screenplay. Welcome to the show, sir. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure and honor to be here with ThePrint.
So, to start the discussion about books, sir, the very basic foundation question that I want to ask you is that what made you choose Ramayana as the subject of this book? While it is an epic which has been told and retold so many times, and it has also been a topic that you keep on revisiting time and again. So what draws it towards?
No, basically, I had done a lot of Ramayana. Always had inspired me right from my childhood. So my first book was Ravana's Ramayana. After that, I did a series of work in television and also as books. So I used this. Many people used to ask me the question of from where did you find all these versions? Where is it about? What is it about? Because each person is more or less familiar about what has been told to them in their society and culture. But what many people miss is that this Ramayana universe is so big and vast that there is a Ramayana for every village in India. It is, and not just India, across Asia there are Ramayanas. So I thought that I have been reading about it for last 25-30 years, and also from my childhood. Of course, in my childhood, I was familiar with the Malayalam version of Ramayana, where I grew up in Kerala. But it was only when I became an adult and I started traveling, I understood that the Ramayanas, which is told in other parts of the country, are somewhat different from what I had grown up with. And thus, that piqued my interest, and from there, the journey started. I thought, why not put it as a book? So initially, it had appeared as an audio retelling. So it is not a research-based book, rather it is an oral storyteller's handbook kind of thing, where whichever Ramayanas I was familiar with or I came across, I put it together in a narrative format. I did it in Audible in both English and Hindi in the Audible channel, and later I added a lot of stories and gave the references wherever it is available. And Harper published it as a book, both as a hardcover and also as a softcover. So this is a compilation of almost 25 years of work.
That is a lot of work put into one book, sir. But moving forward, in your book, you talk about this conversation between Valmiki and Narada, where, Valmiki talks about the perfect man with a set of 16 qualities that you've mentioned. And then he's asked by Narada that, why do you need this perfect man? To which Valmiki says that, isn't Rama supposed to be one? So, do you believe that, through the many renditions of Ramayana or different tales that have surrounded Ramayana, we have, somehow been forced to see Rama as this ideal, perfect man. And we have not, in a sense, given him the immunity to go wrong or maybe take a wrong decision at times. And do you also believe that, in the present time, in the present context of events, it is possible for a concept like this to exist.
Actually, what we have got confused is that Valmiki talks about the perfect man. We have, because Ram is the avatar of Vishnu, the human avatar of Vishnu. He is not Vishnu. So it is not, he's the avatar of Vishnu. There is a finite difference. It is during the Bhakti era Ramayanas, from Kambar onwards to Tulsidas ji, the distinction vanished and he became God. So the moment you say God, we think that there cannot be any flaws. But how Valmiki conceived, he is a perfect man, but even a man will have flaws. He will have his human aspects, human judgmental errors and all, even while being perfect. So that is where this dichotomy comes, where Valmiki ji had conceived Rama as a perfect man. We try to make him into the perfect god-like figure, forgetting that Ram is the avatar, human avatar of Vishnu. So that is something which I try to address in the book. That is where all the confusion comes. A lot of confusion comes, especially, and we try to look at Ram through the Abrahamic lenses of good versus evil.
And sir, coming to the second part of the question, do you think in present times, a concept like this can exist?
A concept as Ram as a model can exist with all the flaws which Valmiki ji has pointed out. See, if Valmiki ji had wanted, he could have written as many of the controversial incidents in Ramayana, he could have avoided it. No, he's Adi Kavi, he could have avoided it. Like killing of Bali, he could have easily written Ram went and fought with Bali. Of course, there are many Ramayanas which talk like that. Which references I have given, like even the references in Mahabharata, where Ram directly fights with Bali and kills him. But there is a reason why Valmiki, because in Valmiki's mind, Ram is the ideal man, the human avatar. So he has to show what all flaws are there also to us. So this Ram of Valmiki cries when Sita is kidnapped. A lot of chapters, he gets angry. So a lot of human qualities we can find, the answers of which he poses as a riddle, the answers come in Mahabharata. So that's why I try to emphasize, originally it was written as a text of karma and karmaphala. It's a text on dharma rather than good versus evil, which is a very simplistic concept. The moment you take that out of good versus evil, then you understand that every action there is a reason. You will find the answers in Ramayana itself, and whatever Ramayana keeps it as open-ended, you will find it in Mahabharata. So as a concept of Ram as an ideal man, a man who you can look up to, can definitely work as long as you don't think that Ram is infallible, and he is. In India, you can, anything and everything is God, and it's a good thing about this culture. But other than that, we should not forget the original reason for why this epic was written.
And so while we are at the topic on how Valmiki has written Ramayana, in your book you have mentioned that Valmiki's Ramayana is the closest to the original one. So is there a reason to why you or readers or other experts in the field believe so?
Basically, the references come in Valmiki Ramayana itself. Even though Valmiki ji is considered as Adi Kavi in the tradition, it is perhaps he who made it into a poetry with all the he's Adi Kavi, so he is the first person who would have written it in the poetic format with all the meters and chandas and everything correct. But the story existed much before him, for which references come in Ramayana itself. Narada had told Ramayana, Hanuman had told Ramayana, Kagabusandi had told Ramayana. These references come in Valmiki Ramayana itself. And Valmiki Ramayana itself is not a single text. There are different versions of Valmiki Ramayana. For example, there is a southern version of Valmiki Ramayana. There is a eastern version of Valmiki Ramayana. There is a northwestern, that is Kashmir, Punjab, and that version of Valmiki Ramayana. So there are at least 3 major versions of Valmiki Ramayana which differ from each other by a substantial amount. And we don't know which is the oldest and which is the actual Valmiki Ramayana. So that itself is a confusion. It's not it's confusion only for scholars. For people, common people, it doesn't matter. The story of Ram is what matters for the common people.
And so, just contrary, to support the concept of the ideal man, you've also talked about in the book about the five satis, or the five righteous women, as remembered in the Hindu mythology. So these women are devoted to their husbands and are known for their dignity. But there is also a sense of glorification that, with the oral renditions and storytellings of these of the epic, has been attached to these women. So, when Valmiki wrote it, or when there were different versions of this Ramayana's retelling, do you think the women were immune, and or they were set into a caste of certain characteristics that they were expected to follow? Like you mentioned in your book about Ahilya, how she was ousted as a woman. Do you think those expectations have also been passed down to generation of women today? And through all the retellings of Ramayana, do you think enough justice has been done to the woman characters who play a role in the epic?
Ramayana over the years have been used as a tool by people of different hues and people of different dispositions. So some people who wanted to impose, especially in the medieval age, the patriarchal values, have used Ramayana as a tool. And during our Renaissance period, the same Ramayana was used as a tool to fight against this patriarchy. So Ramayana is that way a flexible text. If you take the concept of Panchasatis, you find that they don't, none of them tick the boxes of what is traditionally told about women. They are all strong, independent-willed women. Take the case of Ahilya. So in Valmiki Ramayana, she and many of the major Ramayanas of the earlier era, she voluntarily sleeps with Indra. Whereas by the medieval Ramayana, the value of societal values had changed. It has become more rigid and more patriarchal to the women. So the Ahilya is made as an innocent woman who was jilted by Indra, and all those things were brought into that. So those fine differences is what I try to bring in the book. But all the women in that, Ahilya, Draupadi, Kunti, Tara, Mandodari, all of them are quite independent, and none of them will tick the brackets, tick all the boxes of what a medieval or what a patriarchal Indian society of now expects from a woman. None of them. Nobody is going to, the people who are exponents of these patriarchal values, they will get a shock if some women lives like Draupadi or Kunti or Tara or Mandodari or Ahilya. So the concept itself is flawed, because these Panchasatis were Panchasatis because of their value, character and independence.
Okay.
You see, each of the characters are very strong both in Ramayana and Mahabharata, whether it is Kunti or whether it is Draupadi or Mandodari or Tara or Ahilya. They are all quiet, independent, strong-willed characters who doesn't follow a typical at least I'm not talking about the very modern westernized family, but the typical Indian value system of today expects the women to be. So what they did, they just took the names and they put whatever values they want to oppress the women and said that you should live like Panchasati. Including the original Ma Sati will not tick any of the boxes of what a typical traditional conservative family of today wants the women to be. All these women are quite independent and strong-willed.
That is rightly said, sir. But when we talk about how the tale has been sort of tailored to fit a narrative of a time, I would say. During the writing of this process, during the process of writing this book, you also must have come through certain instances, or maybe say tales, which were inspired by the Ramayana, but not really a part of the actual epic, or at least for that specific region. So, how did you differentiate between the folk tales or regional variations, and what was the actual essence of the Ramayana?
I didn't discriminate between. I believe there is no original Ramayana.
Okay.
Or I believe rather every Ramayana is original and authentic. How can we say one particular Ramayana? Because there is no central church for, even this was true about Bible and other religious texts because they evolve over years. But since there was a central text which purged out all the central authority like Pope, they purged out all other variations and said this is the Bible at some part of the history. Even with that, there are many variations. Hinduism is a cultural religion rather than what you call a religion with a church or anything like that. So there are no authorities. So Ramayana developed as per the time and place, and it evolved with time. It is still evolving. So you can't call any Ramayana as authentic. As I pointed out, even Valmiki Ramayana is not the original Ramayana because references come in Valmiki Ramayana itself about other Ramayanas. And also Valmiki Ramayana itself has many versions. Forget Valmiki Ramayana, there are thousands of Ramayana available in partial formats, countless Ramayanas rather. 1,000 itself is a number which is very small. Countless Ramayana. So whatever I got, some tales are very fantastic, which I mentioned in the book. This is not to hurt anybody's sentiments, and this is not, I'm not writing it to hurt anyone. I'm just telling that these things are also available. I encountered them in some part of the world, especially in some part of India. There are communities who believe in this narration or used to believe in this narration, say 300, 400 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. For example, there are variations like Sita being the daughter of Ravan in many Ramayanas. Almost 32 Ramayanas I counted, but I'm not saying that is the number. There could be more. This is like a rough count of at least 32 Ramayanas were encountered. Quite old one, nothing recent I am talking about.
Yeah.
Right from 2nd century BC onwards, we find Ramayanas where Sita is the daughter of Ravanna. There are Ramayanas where Sita, Ram, Lakshmana killing Ravan instead of Ram killing Ravan, like many of the Jain versions of Ramayana, especially in the medieval period. There are versions where Sita killing Ravan instead of Ram killing Ravan. There are versions where there is no Sita abandonment and they live happily ever after. So alternate ending Ramayanas are also available. And there are versions where Ravana is hailed as the next Tirthangara who will come to save the world.
Okay.
So countless variations are there. So I have taken and stitched together it as a narrative and telling that while I am following this general narrative and trying to explain what I have heard from my elders and gurus, the meanings of each of these story points, I also say at the same time there are other versions which says this otherwise. And if you go by other versions, then this particular incident's meaning could be like this. So it goes, it's what is it called, an oral storyteller's art. The book has been written like that, where traditionally oral storytellers, they just tell the story, halt at a point, explain it, go into a deviation, tell that these versions are also available, then underline that point, come back and continue the storytelling tradition. This is what I have followed.
And so while we're talking about Ramayana, so your first book that you wrote was also Asura, which tells Ramayana from the perspective of Ravana. It is also part of sort of covered a little bit in this book. So could you put a little bit light on how things become very different when we view Ramayana or hear Ramayana from the perspective of Rama, the struggles, and Sita, and how different it is for Ravana?
So the moment you go by the versions, especially in South India and the East Asian versions, where Sita is the daughter of Ravan, the entire plot itself changes. Suddenly Ravan is not somebody who has been driven by lust, but rather than the love for the daughter. That itself, there are multiple variations where he knows it is a daughter, he doesn't know it is a daughter. Then there is also the variation of it is a daughter of him and Mandodari. It is the daughter of him, but not Mandodari, but Vedavati. So there itself you find multiple variations in that. But I use the version where Sita is the daughter of Ravan and Mandodari. And because of that, after Surpanaka's nose is cut by Lakshmana, Ravan brings back Sita, thinking that I had to protect her in Lanka. So the moment you do that, the entire perspective of Ramayana changes. So Asura was written like that. And Vanara was written from many folk tales among Adivasis where they lament. The idea came from there are the versions where the folk songs were about the Vanara women who are worried about what happened to their husbands who have gone to fight a war which has got nothing to do with them. Big people have come from big cities, taken the men for some other distant place for some war. How many will return? We don't know. This kind of folk tales come. So the ending of Vanara is all that. The women waiting for the people who Sugriva had taken along with Ram to fight in Lanka. And they coming back. How many they will come back? So many of the folk versions are very domestic in nature, very feminine in its gaze. So they look at the wars and other things not through the glorification of what we see in TV or what we usually tell about so many people who were killed with one arrow, another lakhs of people were killed with one arrow and glorify the violence. Rather, it is about the fear of the women who think about the foolishness of men fighting. So many folktales underline this. Even Mahabharata's Vanaparva, sorry, not Vanaparva, Mahabharata's Sri Parva underlines what Mahabharata is about. That is I think that's the core of Mahabharata, which is my next book, rather, many Mahabharatas. So the core of Mahabharata is Sri Parva, the lamentation of women after 18 days when they come to the battlefield and all women come together, the people who fought under Pandava side or Kaurava side, because they are all family members, cousins and other people. So they all come together to see their sons and fathers and uncles and brothers lying dead. For whose purpose, what purpose? This is a question which Mahabharata also raises. So the moment you change the gaze, from Ravana's perspective, Asura comes. From the women of Vanara's perspective, Tara's perspective, Vanara comes. From the eyes of Tadaka or Meenakshi, who is Shurpanaka, or the women of Ramayana, the Valmiki's women, the book which I wrote comes. So you see it from the periphery, not from the main stage. So how would have Tadaka felt about the whole thing? How would have Mantara felt about the whole thing? A maid working in Ayodhya and who fiercely tried to protect. She was a nanny of Kaikeyi, who had brought up Kaikeyi. She is not just a servant. Mantara was a nanny or somebody who brought up Kaikeyi, like a foster mother. So from her perspective, how the whole thing would have looked like. How about the sister of Ram, how it would have looked like? All those things I mentioned, from where I got all those ideas for my other books, and where you can read about them. I write it in many Ramayanas, many lessons, where many people will not be aware that many Ramayanas mention about an elder sister of Ram called Shanta, which comes basically in the northern rendition of Valmiki Ramayana and also in Mahabharata. In the Vanaparva Mahabharata's Ramopakyana, it comes. So there are mentions of Shanta in various places, scattered over the places. So I compiled these kind of things from various Puranas and various oral tellings and put it across.
Even like the next mention that I was going to make was of Shanta, because personally, when I came to know about Shanta, even from the earlier retellings of Ramayana that I had heard as a child, I was never told about Shanta. So when I remember as a child when I started watching Siya Ke Ram on Star TV, and that also had a mention of Shanta, and then I went to my parents and I was like, oh, did Rama also have an elder sister? So that is how I got to know about this side of Ramayana as a whole. But when we're talking about Ramayana and Mahabharata,
I think in mainstream I had reintroduced perhaps Shanta in the mainstream television, because Siya Ke Ram only it came, and many people went back and they found out that yes, there is a mention of Shanta, not in Valmiki Ramayana by name, of what is available in print now, but in northern rendition of Valmiki. Now what you get is a critical edition, where in last 70, 80 years ago, they combined a lot of versions and say this is Valmiki Ramayana. But there are prints available of 18th century, 19th century of Ramayana, where this three different versions of Valmiki Ramayana comes. Camille Burke in his scholarly article has mentioned about it also. So those references also I given. So I introduced Shanta to the mainstream television recently. Not that nobody else has written it, but as a mainstream television thing, I think it was for this generation. This might be the new one, perhaps.
And when we're talking about this generation, sir, obviously Ramayana and Mahabharata, as much as it's part of the Hindu tradition as a whole, and all of us as children must have heard about these epics from our parents, from our grandparents. But what is it about these epics that make them ageless and interest to all generations? Or what does the current generation and even people who are in their young ages, in their teenage, in their early 20s, 30s, what does each one of them have to take from these epics?
Basically, both Ramayana and Mahabharata, you have to read them combined because many answers come in Mahabharata, the questions raised in Ramayana. Basically, so that's what they call Dharma Shastras. So, what are Dharma Shastras? They are not a set of instructions. They are not moral tales. They are not a book of commandments. Because the Indian tradition never commands you to do something and say that if you don't do it, you will be punished, you will go to hell, or you will be rewarded if you do it. So there is no tradition like that. What it gives us is a set of puzzles. It is left to us to go to the puzzle and solve it. So that's why they are called Dharma Shastras, where it is a debate on Dharma. So one thing about Dharma is that it is not constant. It keeps changing according to the time, place, and culture. So what is Dharma today may not be Dharma tomorrow. What is Dharma for me may not be the Dharma for you. Not entirely. There could be some fundamental principles, but basically everything depends on the context and the place and time where you are looking at. So what it does, everyone in any phase of life, when they look back to these tales, they can find something relatable to their life about the dilemma between the duty towards your job versus your family, the duty towards the country versus duty to yourself. Every moment we are taking such choices, right? Every moment in a point of life, life is not so simple to choose between good versus evil. If we know what is good and what is evil, 99% of the people or 100% of the people will choose good. We don't know about that. If you know what is right and wrong, we don't know about that. And mostly in life, it is always right versus a bit more right, or what we think as a bit more right, or wrong versus a bit more wrong, or what we think as a bit more wrong. So it's very fussy. That is where these kind of text comes. So because every character goes through this kind of Dharma Sankat. That's why the plot turns on Dharma Sankat. And the consequences, they live with the consequences. Every action, whether it is good or bad, there will be a fruit for that action, the karma bala. So it teaches that also. So we constantly go back, and the epics also evolve with life. That's why they are so dynamic, and that's why they are Dharma Shastras rather than a book of commandments. Hence, they will stay relevant, or people will keep rewriting it and keep it relevant.
Yeah. And so, is there a mention, like, obviously, I think I read it somewhere, I don't remember which version of Ramayana, but there's a telling that Ramayana was based on the Treta Yuga, or Mahabharata was based on the Dwapar Yuga. How much of it is true, or are there any variations to these claims as well?
In Ramayana itself, one not contradiction, one interesting thing comes about that is about the concept of Kagabusandi. So Kagabusandi is a time traveler. And he says that he's a crow sage. There are a lot of backstories which I have mentioned. It will take a lot of time, and I'll just tell the concept. Whenever Ram is born, he comes to be present at that time. He sees the Ram's, the childhood always, and enjoys in that. And then he flies away because to another universe and another time where Ramayana is happening. So, as per this theory, Ramayana is countless Ramayanas have happened. Countless Ramayanas are simultaneously happening now with varying results and varying storylines, essentially the same story with minor variations here and there.
Yeah.
In even as we are speaking, in billions of universes, this Ramayana is happening, and Kagabusandi travels from one place to another, trying to see the Ram being born, and
Yeah.
he laments that he is not able to cover even 1 billionth of it because there are so many Ramayanas happening now, and every moment it is happening. So it goes to the concept of multiverse, and it goes to the concept of time travel, and a lot of other deeper things.
So definitely we did it earlier than the Marvel universe. The concept
There are
of
a lot of concepts, such concepts come. I don't know. See, imagination is as powerful as science, or the imagination is the, people say maths is the base of science, but I believe imagination is the base of anything, including science. So, one of the tales which comes in Rigveda is this: one king wants to have his daughter married, but he finds that none of the earthlings are good enough for his daughter. Like most fathers feel, whoever is a suitor, he don't find them suitable. So he decides that he will go to Brahmalok and ask Brahma about an advice about a suitable groom. When he reaches there, Ma Saraswati is playing the veena, so he thinks it is not proper to interrupt when Saraswati is playing the veena. So he listens to it. The song, it goes for around 5 minutes. And after that, when Saraswati stops, Brahma notices him. He asks, "Why have you come?" The king says that I came for my finding a groom to my daughter. Who do you suggest? And Brahma starts laughing. Saraswati starts laughing, and everyone present there starts laughing. So the king asks, "Why are you laughing?" So they says that the 5 minutes you spend here, 63,000 years have passed in on earth, and
okay.
your daughter and their so many generations have passed on. So you don't bother about that. The time travels differently here and on
Yeah.
earth. This concept come 4,000, 5,000 years ago. So it is all amazing. And I'm not saying everything there makes such great, deep philosophical sense. There are a lot of things which make us laugh now also. Like
Yeah.
maybe we are not understood it, or maybe they are actually absurd. Like the sea of butter and sea of wine and sea of honey. All these kind of descriptions are there. So I'm not saying everything written there is written with a high scientific mind or anything, but because of their great imagination, they have glimpsed parts of the universal truth which they have jotted down. We need to take only what is required for us. That's the first rule of any Dharma Shastra. Take what is only suitable and required for us and reject everything else. Because as per the time and the place and the person, what is right and what is wrong will change. So choose, pick and choose. Use your intellect, just like Krishna had told after narrating the Gita. Use your intellect, your logical reasoning. I have given you the Gita. Choose what is relevant for you. That's a fundamental advice.
And so to wrap this all up, if I had to ask you three things that anyone should be looking forward from this book, what would you say it would be?
I hope it will clear the clouds of dogma, and I hope they will be able to appreciate the vast, rich, deep tradition of the old Indic civilization, which expands from the borders of Iran to Japan, including Mongolia. That is a spread of Ramayana, and
Yeah.
it has spread beyond also to Europe. But basically, this is the core of Ramayana versions which I have brought. So I hope it will clear the dogmas of saying that there is only one Ramayana. My Ramayana is right, and everybody should bow down to it. That is not Indian culture. It is respecting all traditions and cherishing them, nurturing them. So I hope this book is just a small contribution to that old classical Indian civilization.
Thank you so much, sir, for sparing time for
Thank
this
you.
interview. It was a delight to have you
Thank you,
on
Sampurna.
point. And all the best for your upcoming book, sir. And I request all our viewers to quickly go to their to the nearest bookstore and grab a copy of the book. I'm going to show you, I'm going to show it to you all again. Uh, so this is the book, and it's a must read, and it's everyone should go and buy a copy for themselves. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.